Hi, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another episode of Lawn Club. With us today, we have Mr. Anand Gupta, the founder and CEO of Memo Pandits, India's first mooting school. After graduating from National Law University, Odisha in 2016, he joined the banking and finance team of Shardul Amarchand Mangaldasan. After working there for 2 years, he left and started his own venture called Memo Pandits, India's first mooting school. Apart from being a fantastic pianist, he's also the owner of Infinite Detours, a trekking and hiking start. So, in this session today, we'll talk about Anand Gupta's journey from leaving a lucrative Tier 1 law firm job to starting his own venture and the challenges he faced while starting his own venture. So, without wasting further, let's just get right into it. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Lawn Plug. With us today, we have Anand Gupta, sir. So, without further ado, let's just jump right into it.
Yes.
So, firstly, Anand, sir, while reading about you, as you all know, you graduated from National Law University, Odisha in 2016. So, how do you think NLUO has changed from the time you entered in 2011 till the time you graduated in 2016 until now in 2020, where in almost all moods NLU is winning some prize?
Yeah. So our batch was the third batch of NLE Odisha, and the time when I got in, first of all, I wasn't even in the first list of NLUO admissions. I was in the third waiting list, I remember. But yeah, to my luck, I finally got through NLE Odisha in 2011, and one of the things which struck everyone was the lack of infrastructure at that time, because it was still a very new college, and almost all the students had this concern that there is no campus as such. But over the years, we got to know that there were plans of having good infrastructure, and then of course we were shifted to a very new campus. Regarding the mooting, I think like the mooting culture, I think NLE Odisha has had some luck right from the beginning. Our seniors and our super seniors, they knew some tips or tricks, or I don't know what that was, which made them win Best Memorial Awards at a lot of moot court competitions in 2009, 10, 11, 12, like from around that time. But when we got in, what we immediately got hold of was that mooting is something which is taken very seriously by this college. The seniors and your batchmates and your juniors are ready to help with anything which you require if you are competing outside the university. So I think the helping nature of the college students and sometimes the faculty was enough for all of us to have a very good mooting culture as such in the college, which I believe is continuing till date. NLU Odisha still happens to be one of one of the most I think looked after teams in any moot court competition. When we were in college, we also had a team which was in the semi-finals of the Jessup International Moot Court competition, and that was just one of the things which was happening around us when we were there. So I believe, like, from the beginning till now, mooting is something which has never gone out of sight, and it will be getting stronger by the semester, by the year.
Right, sir. I mean, just to mention it, in every moot court competition, if there is a team representing NLUO, then the opposite team is always on their toes. Yeah, they can't concede any error. Yeah, otherwise, the NLUO team will just pounce on them and then beat them. Yeah, that is what happens, right? And yeah, One more reason I think that when you started Memo Pandits in your third year, I mean, all your seniors as well as your juniors got access to top quality memorial making course materials. So that I guess also helped in the mooting culture in NLU also. Yeah. So how do you think you started this venture just in the third year? Such a path-breaking startup.
So the establishment of Memo Pandits does not have a very fairy story. Like it has had its share of bad days and rocky starts, because although the idea which we had and the product which we had was very attractive to the consumer base, which is law students, we were facing a lot of issues from the administration of our college in regards to conducting those workshops in the college. There were reasons which were very petty and which were not really encouraging for any student, because of which one of the high-ranking teachers, initially dropped the idea, like rejected the idea of us even conducting a workshop in our college. And by the way, just as a disclosure, this workshop was a paid workshop. So what we did was, first of all, like when we used to, I'll just begin from how it all started. We were helping a lot of our juniors, our batchmates, and our seniors in their memorials for any national and international moot court competition. And we were also observing that most of those memorials were going on to become the best memorials of the respective moot court competition. So of course, like, we knew that there is something that we are doing right, but apart from that, there was one thing, which is we did not have so much energy and so much time to cater to the needs of so many other students in the college. So that's how the idea of Memo Pandits came into being. What we thought was, let's just teach everyone else what we know in the form of a workshop. Initially it used to be a 4-day workshop, and for that we proposed that we will keep a rate between 350 rupees to 500 rupees per student. To our surprise, more than 100 students had registered, and we were in receipt of the entire amount when these high ranking faculty members, what they did was, on the ground of using the college's using the college's physical classes, they said that you can't do this for a for-profit venture, which I think, even at that time I told that person one argument. He was earlier teaching in NLS, so I told him categorically that you are from NLS, and NLS has so many startups inside the college itself. So why don't you want us to do this? And it's for a noble cause. So of course he did not have any good answers. But yeah, a very rewarding moment was when, I think about 6-7 months back, he's currently the VC of one of the NLUs. So about 6 to 7 months back, he called us for a workshop for Memo, like on behalf of Memo Pandit. I think that was kind of rewarding, but yeah, it has been really, really tough to navigate through all these administrative hurdles in the last 6 years.
Right. Very well said there, Anand sir. I recall Vijay Shekhar Sharma's story, which resonates with you. Vijay Shekhar Sharma happens to be the CEO of Paytm, and what happened was that he was a student of Delhi University. All the nerds and all the geeks they end up at Delhi University, and as luck had it that he didn't have money in his pocket once. So while he was riding in an auto, the auto driver lashed out at him and he said that you poor kids, you only can score good marks, but you can never pay 30 or 40 bucks to me. What kind of student are you? So he told him that you see, one day I'll buy your entire company and today he has stakes in Ola and Uber. So I guess your story of that VC inviting you at his NLU is what is an epitome of a success story. So before we proceed with another of Memo Pandit centric question, I want you to come back to your days of graduating from NLU Odisha, and as you said that yours was the third batch itself. So
Yes.
tell us how exactly was it possible for third batch of an NLU of a very young NLU to have a placement at Shardul Amarchand Mangaldas?
So so many instances which I can instantly recall. So many positive and negative thoughts which are attached to this feeling, because first of all, I was the first person of my college to get an internship in get a placement in Amarchand Mangaldas. I was also the first person to get a placement in my batch, which was the fourth year end. But of course, it's not as rosy as you may think it is, because a lot of my seniors, like of course, every batch has those stud seniors and stud students,
Yeah.
right? So one of the stud students of our super senior batch was interning at Amarchand for months, and his general, perspective was that they're not. They don't allow lower NLUs and new NLUs to sort of get recruited and all of that, and so was the general perception of every student of our college, that it's simply not possible for any NLUO student to get into such a firm. But of course, I never heard any of those voices, because it's simply stupid to hear all of these stupid voices. You simply can't pay attention to every voice which goes against you, because then you won't be able to do anything. So how it all started was, I applied for an internship at Amarchand Mangaldas, which was also not easy to get, because I had applied to the other 4 tier 1 law firms, and all I received rejection from all of the 4. But I kept following up with the HR of Amarchand Mangaldas for quite a few weeks, and I had applied at least 6 months in advance. So I think getting an internship was the first step. And during my first internship itself, I had helped my team draft an advice which was supposed to go out to a client in the name of Shardul Shroff. And that advice was, when Shardul Shroff actually reviewed the contents of that advice, he suggested only minimal changes. I think that's what my team, that's when my team thought that this is someone who is reliable, and that's why they gave me a second chance. So every time you intern in Amarchand, first you go for a second internship or a callback, and then you may get a PPO, or then you may get an interview, and then you may get a PPO, right? So then came the second internship. In the second internship, I broke my foot. I was my foot was in a cast, and I was advised to get a week or 2 weeks rest because I had a ligament tear. But I knew one thing, that there will be people who would say, ki rest around this time, and it doesn't matter, and there's nothing you can do. But what I thought was, all of these excuses don't matter to Amarchand Mangaldas. It's such a big organization that when I will exit, some other person will come and that person will replace me. That's all what's going to happen. You are as you're that small to them, you're that minimal to them, that it simply won't matter whatever your circumstances are. So by whatever means, by whatever I could do, I joined back in 3 to 4 days, and I started working with a broken foot. And then I got extensions after extensions. My second internship went on for 2 months, and there was a running joke. I was called the senior intern, because people used to come and go, and I used to stay there. So yeah, all of that happened, and then the interview happened. even around the interview time. So basically, once you do your internship at Amarchand, you're supposed to submit a research paper or something like that. I'm not sure if that requirement is still there, but that requirement was there for me. So I obviously, gave it my all. I wrote a good research paper on some corporate law topic, but unfortunately, when I went for help to my faculty members, they refused to proofread it, or they refused to even go through the contents of the research paper. So all of these things happened. There were instances where I could have been heartbroken, but for some reason I was also sort of getting a kick out of it, because I wanted to show all of these people that you do whatever you want to do, and then I'll show you. So yeah, all of that happened, and then I cracked the offer right in my fourth year end, and it was surprising to me, to my friends, to my batchmates. Even after I got the offer, I actually did not stop hustling in college. Like, I chilled a lot. Like, I was obviously I obviously was thankful for the 1 year, like the entire fifth year which I had to me, where I had no obligations, nothing to do as such. But I sort of started to get bored. So by the end of my fifth year, I participated again in a moot court competition and in NUJS HSF corporate law moot court competition, just to check if I'm really, if I'm really what I think I am. And of course, it was also one of those moments where other people were eyeing your sort of, your result, because if I did not do well, of course they could have said that iska to luck se ho gaya ya fir iska aise ho gaya. But fortunately, we were the finalists for that moot court competition, and I was quite happy. So the journey in short is very simple to understand. That it was difficult to get into Amarchand, but I got there. But the things which happened, the things which happened and led to that result are, I can't even an hour is very less to discuss all of those. So this is all what I can tell you right now.
Yeah, again, but you missed to elaborate on one thought. That was it your hustle that you did while you were interning, or were the academics paid equal attention to? Because you, the last time we discussed this, you told us that you were busy doing illegal things in the first sem. So
academics. I would honestly say that I have never paid a lot of attention to academics. In fact, I was one of those students who used to study 7 days before the midsems, or 1 day before the end sems, something like that. Like, the rest of the semester is obviously for chilling, and you only study before the midsems or the end sems. That happened throughout the 5 years. In fact, in the 5th year, we stopped doing that also. In the last semester, like the 10th semester, there were 2 exams jinke liye we did not study at all. But fortunately, I have never had a lot of issues with writing exam answers, or writing answers which fetch me marks. Right? That's ultimately what you need to do in any academic exam. So I've never had a lot of issues with that. So that's why I've never spent a lot of time on academics as such. It used to be moot courts, research papers, or startups. Otherwise, it used to be chilling, going out with friends, chilling with friends. That's all. So that's all what I can think of about all the things apart from academics which I've been in touch with.
Right. I guess you have cleared a very big misconception that NLU Nagpur has been following, that academics is the ultimate thing which gets you into each and every law firm out there.
See, the thing is, that being said, I would also like to say that my CGPA was never bad. It was actually like I was one of the top 20-30 rankers of my college. So my CGPA was always above 80%. But I like if ever I had any doubts regarding a fall in my CGPA, then I used to buck up because I knew one thing that although marks don't matter that much, but they do raise questions sometimes. They do. For example, if you have let's say about 60% CGPA in your college, and then you sit for an interview, why do you want to give an opportunity to the interviewer to ask you why you got 60% or why you got 70%? Instead, if you work hard and if you get about 80%, you can totally skip that question and talk about the main question, right? So like that being said, what I wanted to clear out was academics are like getting a good CGPA is nonetheless necessary if you want to get placed, or it still goes in my CV, right? Because I'm actually applying for a couple of MBA colleges right now. The CGPA of my NLUO, like my NLUO CGPA still goes in all of my CVs and all of my academic records. So it's definitely going to be very important. You just have to play it smart. If you aren't, if you aren't that sharp to know about exam answers, then you definitely have to work hard. Then there is no shortcut. But if you can get above, let's say 70 to 80% without studying too much, then I would say please invest your time in other things. Please invest your time in other important and personal things. Like you need to spend time for on yourself also. So do that in the remaining time.
Right. So if I'm right, academics and your marks are not the sole criterion to judge anyone. So yeah, but academics do help to get a foot in the door, right? One foot in the door. Yeah. Right.
Yes. Even half a foot is may make a lot of difference at some point of time. So you never know. That's why you don't want to mess that up.
Right. So coming again back to the time that you invested in your startup and you didn't waste in academics because you are very smart. So I guess tell us about the transition phase of quitting Amarchand and coming back to working for something that you have always wanted to work. And what was the reaction of your parents, and what was the mental state that you went through while deciding on if or if not should I quit Sharma?
So of course, whatever you hear about tier 1 law firms is true. Whatever you hear about the work pressure, whatever you hear about the work timings, all of that is true. In fact, you might be hearing a toned down version of it, because my work timings used to be something like 10 a.m. to 12, 1, 2 a.m. And if there was a day when I was back home by 11 p.m., I used to be so happy. So then I, gradually realized that my bar for happiness is way too down and is absolutely not what I expected. Of course, the money which you are making when you're working for a firm like this is the sole binding factor sometimes, and that's why actually probably stuck there for I was stuck there for 2 years, because when the money hits your account, then you obviously get you have a feel good kind of a thing where you think that you can dine fancy, you can travel fancy, you can shop fancy. So all of those things definitely help, and these things will more help more if you're from a middle class family background, where you've not had a lot of freedom to spend money out of your own pocket, because as soon as you get financial freedom, you're like, oh my god, this is it, right? But you obviously know, you obviously come to realize at some point of time that money is not making me happy for a long time. Like, I know money is increasing, and each month I'm getting some security in terms of finance, but it's making me more sad and sad. And of course, this whatever I'm saying right now, only I would say that it only applies to me for this situation. Any person working at any law firm might have a different perspective, because they have different needs in life. They might actually be in love with law, which I was not. So what I was saying was, for me, I was a misfit there. I could do everything. I could perform well. I I was, even, when I was about to leave, I was given a very hard time, in the sense that my team did not want me, did not want me to did not want me to go, basically. So it was very hard for me to also leave something like that, which is so secure, with which your parents are so happy with. Because of course, my father still, sometimes says that uh, a secured amount of money, if that's hitting your bank account every month, that's a good, good way of leading life, because he's also been in service, so he of course understands the value of security, like financial security. And it was difficult to convince them, but the day when I decided, when I want to quit, was the day of my sister's engagement. I had asked for a 2-day leave from my 1-day leave or 2-day leave. I don't remember exactly. A 2-day leave from my office, and I obviously had told them that it's my sister's engagement, and I told this to them 1 month in advance. But one of my partners, who I one of my partners, she gave me so much work on my sister's engagement, and her her rationale was that, okay, you'll be done by 3 o'clock, right? You'll be done by 3 p.m., so you'll be able to do these 7 or 8 items after 3 p.m. I can expect them by 11 p.m. It's not an issue. And that day I lost it. Like, I was flabbergasted, simply because of the fact that I started to introspect on the fact that, if I don't have time for important events in my life, what am I going to do with this money? What does this money mean to me if I'm not there for important people, for my family, for my friends? And so that day I lost it, and the next day I of course went and told my partner that I don't want to work here again anymore. So that was the moment when I thought that I need to do something else, like whatever it may be. Nothing can be worse than this, probably. So that happened, but of course, dhire I made a plan of how I need to exit, what I need to do after I exit Amarchand Mangaldas. And one of the plans was to continue with Memo Pandits, which was a little dormant, and also which was not so commercialized by then. We started commercializing Memo Pandits recently. Before that, we used to do most of the work for free. So Memo Pandits was one thing in my hand. The other thing was one of my trekking startups, which I started right after Amarchand Mangaldas, owing to my passion and love for traveling and trekking. These two things were definitely there, and I was like, and of course, I read about it a lot. I got advice from my sister, and she said that basically that 20 to 30 years the most, where you should be seeing what you actually want to do, because once you're stuck with something, then you can't take a U-turn. Once you are a senior associate, once you are a principal associate or a partner, and once you have responsibilities in life, once you have a kid, once you have a family to cater to, once you have EMIs, it's absolutely impossible. Or if not impossible, it's going to be more difficult. So if I explore in 20 to 30 years of age, it's definitely going to be easier than any time of my life. So I thought, why not? Let's explore, and whatever works, I will, continue with that. So yeah, that's the story of how things ended with Amarchand Mangalas and how my startups took the shape in which they are today.
Right, sir.
Right.
Coming back to your tryst with mountains, right? You have been the owner of Infinite Detours, which is a hiking startup. You've on that part. You have also organized treks to Chopta, Chandrashila, Parvati Valley treks, and yeah, other reputed mountains as well. So when did this love for the mountains begin?
Uh, so my family has actually made me travel a lot in India, and in fact, the first 6 years of my life have been in the mountains in Uttarakhand. So I think I've had some kind of innate affinity towards mountains in general, and like even leaving all of that, if I were to simply talk about my love for the mountains, I would say that it's so peaceful. It's so it's like a blank canvas whenever you visit any mountain or whenever you're doing any trek. When you finally see that landscape which you were looking at, which you were either imagining or seeing in pictures, it's so magical to get that feeling. So I think that's one of the reasons why I started to trek, and I started trekking in my third year. And the first time I actually trekked, uh, so the trek was actually a very easy one, and it generally takes about 30 minutes or 40 minutes for people to do complete that trek. But we took about 2.5 to 3 hours, and that simply told us a very that like a very concerning thing, which was that our fitness levels were to be taken care of. So I actually have been very I've seen a lot of illness throughout my life. I've had swine flu, I've had typhoid, I've had tuberculosis, I've had chicken pox, measles, and whatnot. Sorry, bronchitis, and whatnot. Yeah. So apart from corona, I think till now, touch wood, I've almost seen everything which is out there, which is not fatal. So the thing was that I took it as a challenge to myself that I need to sort of bring my fitness levels up to a point where I am comfortable in doing any trek which I want. And so I also have a friend who was India's youngest person to scale the Mount Everest. His name is Arjun Vajpayee, and he also served as an inspiration sometimes. And his whole hustle to just trek to all the 8,000-meter peaks, it has also sort of shaped my liking for the mountains and in trekking in general. So that's how like my love for trekking began, and one after the other I started to complete treks. I increased my fitness levels. I went into calisthenics, where I was trying to take care of all my all the sort of things where I was lacking. Like stamina is one of the things which I lacked. Then lower body strength was something which I lacked. So I took care of all of these things one by one. So that's how slowly and gradually I came to a point where I was comfortable in trekking to good mountains like 3,000, 4,000 meter peaks. And I also try to trek to a couple of high altitude mountains and hills in USA. So after doing all of that, I was convinced about the fact that okay, now I'm at a point where my fitness levels are at least as good as they should be for my age. So now the only thing which challenges me right now is to just aim higher, to do treks which are even more difficult, to scale mountains which people have not really heard about. So yeah, that's how the love for trekking and mountaineering began, and that's where it stands as of now.
Sir, it would
Actually,
be right to say that you are Elon Musk of mountaineering, right? You are always up for
No,
something
actually,
more always.
I think I'm very distant from Elon Musk right now. I'm nowhere close because that guy is a god. So I would say I still have a lot of miles to cover before I get there.
right.
But
True,
yeah,
true.
I do try to follow his ideology in general. So yeah, if that analogy is to be made, then I am really happy that it's turning out to be that way.
Uh, right, sir. Yeah. Actually, sir. Yeah. In fact, I've also been to a trek to Nandanvan, I guess. Yeah. So I just recall it when the first stage was Bhoj Basa, then it was Cheer Basa. So from Cheer Basa to Tapovan, it was some 70-degree climb. So at that time, I thought trekking वापस नहीं करना है. It was 70-degree incline. I was actually very scared I would fall or what would happen. Yeah, but all that came. But as they say, after the hardest climb, only then comes the best view. Right. So when I was coming down, so then I was like, wow, trekking is for me. I am for trekking. I must do this more often. So yeah,
Yeah.
what your view on that?
So I think one of the things which attract me towards trekking is that you're at your own peace when you're trekking. You find that quietness, you find that silence which you probably are looking for. So of course, like whenever we go for a trek, and let's say it's a very difficult trek, and when we finally reach there, that feeling is unmatched to any day that I've spent in any law firm or any day where I was working for something which I did not like. So I would, yeah, yeah, like that feeling is necessary to have in life. Otherwise, it's necessary for your mental health in general, like to have something which gives you happiness when you're doing it. Or we obviously do things which don't make us that happy, but we have to do it because of responsibilities or maybe some other extraneous circumstances. So if your job is one of those situations, then do try to find some ways where you can find happiness where with whatever you are doing. It may be trekking, it may be music, it may be any other thing which when you're doing it, it actually gives you happiness.
Right, so yeah. In today's days, actually, mental health is very important, as we all know it. And yeah,
Absolutely.
actually, coming back to mountain trekking, and yeah, it really helps to rejuvenate, refresh, and connect to the nature. Yeah, it really feels nice. So moving ahead, you also happen to play the piano. You have a YouTube channel where you have more than 5 lakh views. And my personal favorite is where you play the Flight of the Bumblebee. I mean, being a pianist myself, I know that is Flight of the Bumblebee is one of the hardest pieces to play on the piano. Right? It is almost impossible for human fingers to play that. But in your video, you seem to make it look very effortless. Right. So, yeah, how did you manage doing that?
So I've one trait in my personality which I hate and love is perfectionism. You definitely love it a lot of times where you think that the product which you finally come up with is so brilliant and is so free of errors. But at the same time, perfectionism frustrates you a lot. So what you see as effortless, that the Flight of the Bumblebee video would have at least taken about 60-70 retakes to reach a point where I was making no mistakes throughout that 2 minutes of video. So I think, yeah, regarding my love for music, I've been playing the piano since I was in third grade. Then yeah, so it's been on and off, but throughout my school, I was absolutely into music. I was also the head of my band, like our school band, for 2 years. And the entire saga revolves around the fact that, doing something, again, like doing something which makes you happy, which gives you happiness, should be done. Like those things should happen in your life. So one of those things was music. I did lose touch in college because I was busy doing other things. I was busy exploring things which I've never explored in school. You know, be it interacting with so many people, getting into so many, like having opportunities to do things which, of course, like which you may never get after college or before college, because college is something where you have a lot of free time and you should use that college time very wisely, because after college your life would change A to Z. Like there's nothing going to be similar at all. So I think I was very happy that I sort of dedicated my entire college time to productive and some unproductive things, both of which I am proud of. But because of this, I was able to give less time to music. I think gave performances in my college only 3 to 4 times, which was nothing, which is actually nothing for any regular musician, because in school we used to play almost like every week or every 2 weeks. There is some gig happening, there is some competition happening, or we are playing for our internal school competitions or something like that. Kept on happening. So 3 to 4 performances in a span of 5 years is way too less for any musician, I would say. But yeah, I think my love for music still stays, and that's why I recently actually picked up Trinity grade exams for piano. Actually one of them was due in June, but I don't know how that will happen, because actually the examiners come from Europe, so that's delayed a bit. But yeah, in summary, I would say that music definitely has stayed and will always stay throughout my life. The only thing is that most often I don't enjoy playing for the public. I sort of like to play for myself only. If I'm alone, I'll play it for myself, and then I'll be happy that I figured out a song, or I figured out some tune perfectly or something like that. So my YouTube channel was something which I started around 10th, and I just put the videos in 10th, 11th, 12th. After that, I don't think I put many videos. And the video which you were talking about, Flight of the Bumblebee, for viewers who are confused what this song is, what this symphony is about, basically, this is the song which you might have heard in Tom and Jerry. When Tom runs, or Jerry runs, there's a very fast piece of music which is played on the piano. That piano piece is called Flight of the Bumblebee, which is incredibly hard to play. But of course, Ameya, I'm sure that if you practice a lot, you would get there.
Right. Yeah. So thank you for the motivation. Now that is my next goal, to be able to play Flight of the Bumblebee. Right. And indeed, yeah, whatever you said about the frequency of times you played the piano in school and in college, yeah, I can totally relate to that. Right. And indeed, Sayab, looking for flawless playing of the piano, yeah, it is truly a sign of a great musician. Right. Okay.
Right. I guess now after Elon Musk of mountaineering, you are becoming Mozart of piano.
Mozart.
I don't know what has got me. I'm doing this analogy thing.
Yeah,
Anyways, yeah.
Yeah, bring some other name. Yeah, from the you're just saying Elon Musk. That is becoming
Mozart. It can either be Mozart, or if I was to go in indigenous terms, then you are Amir Khan of piano, because he is Mr. Perfectionist. So maybe,
I think he's referring to the perfectionism trait. Which
yeah,
Right,
perfectionism.
right.
Yeah. So
But that's
moving,
not a trait which I would wish for the worst of my enemies. It's something which I struggle with every day. It's not something which is easy to have. It's not something which is easy to live by. But of course, if you have it, then you will have obvious advantages in life. So yeah.
Right. So Rajesh, just to correct you on this, if you want some names of great musicians in India, Hasid Nanda is one. Okay, yeah, just joking. Okay, anyway.
Hasit Nanda is my junior from my school.
Oh, good to know that. Yeah, I'm a huge fan. Yeah. Genuinely.
Yeah.
I don't
Okay,
know.
so
I guess now you are really becoming into some legend of music. You have juniors who are turning into musicians. Your video crosses 5 lakh views. You are now becoming a Trinity scholar, Trinity, like created
Yeah.
pianist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, moving ahead, we have this a segment of ours which we call "On Your Fingertips." It is a pseudo rapid fire round where we throw questions at you and we expect you to be as fast as you can. So moving ahead, the first week, if not Memo Pandits, what would the name of your startup have been?
Indian Mooting School. We've already talked about it a lot of times. In fact, our organization is registered in the name of Indian Mooting School, not Memo Pandits, because ultimately we want to encapsulate everything which is related to mooting.
Nice. That's a big revelation, I guess. Moving ahead,
That's not a revelation because it's there on our official paper, so it's for official purposes it's there already. But yeah, Indian Mooting School was something which we were eyeing at, but it's very difficult to change the name right now because of the brand value which is attached to Memo Pandits and the history which Memo Pandits has. So yeah, but if given a chance, if we are in a parallel world, I would go for IMS, which is Indian Mooting School.
Yeah, Indian Mooting School sounds a lot like Indian Business School or Indian School of Business. That is the leading B school. So it sounds great. I mean, it resonates with that. Moving ahead, how would you describe yourself in 3 words?
3 words, okay. Determined, confident, and sometimes dominant. So yeah, those are the 3 words which
Right.
I actually hear about all of these 3 words from my friends a lot. Sometimes in a positive way, sometimes in a negative way. So that's how I'm coming up with it.
Maybe next time we get Rajnendra sir to elaborate on the dominant part.
Yeah, no, so we work really well that way because if there's something difficult which is needed to be decided, then I step in and then I try to make a decision for the both of us, and it works well for him because his personality complements my personality. So he's not going to he's not going to put a lot of roadblocks in that difficult decision making process. But at the same time, if there's something which needs like a devil's advocate, then he's always up to
Right.
it.
So the next really, being
Yeah, I guess we should really bring Rajnendra sir in the next segment.
Sure. Now we would play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are saying something.
No, I was saying that Rajnendra would be happy to be with you guys for this show, for this talk.
Definitely. That's we. I think Rajendra sir might get a new notification on LinkedIn today.
He's not on LinkedIn. He's not on LinkedIn. That's the issue.
We'll track him down wherever he is. We'll find him and
he's on Twitter. He's on Instagram. He's on Facebook, but he's not on LinkedIn. I keep telling him, but he's just too lazy for it right now because of all the work which we have, which we have these days. The lockdown has opened a lot of gates for Memo Pandit, so all day we are just working from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. It's just work.
So now that you have mentioned that you are very dominant, So if given an opportunity, who would you exchange lives with, for a day?
Someone mortal, or like someone who's living right now, or someone in the past.
Can be anyone. Can be even a fantasy.
So today I would definitely say Elon Musk. If somebody who is not with us right now, then Steve Jobs, but without the impeding danger of disease, which I would know about. So either Steve Jobs or Elon Musk. Nobody else.
Yeah, but only one thing. If you ever become Elon Musk, I would request you to please spell Kyle as Kyle and not XEAE minus what 12 something like that.
There's a lot of quirky things which he does, which has absolutely no reason. But what I like about him is that he makes his own rules. Like nobody can sort of tell him what to do. If he is naming his child whatever in whatever way he wants, there's no government official. There's no one in the world who can tell him don't do that or you can't do that. So that's something which I really admire about him.
Right. Once I guess there were government officials to tell him that you can't smoke on a radio show.
Yeah.
But anyways,
I don't think those officials would be government officials right now. Whatever the case may be, you can't mess with Elon Musk. Whoever you are in the world, you can't do anything to. Even Donald Trump is saying these days that we should promote people like Elon Musk. So if a dumb person like that, who has so much power, can endorse a person like Elon Musk, then I think anybody should be willing to just let everything go which Elon Musk does. Like whatever his Twitter handle might say, whatever his public statements would say, just let's just pass it by and not comment on it.
Right. And the last question of this segment, being that you have to name three go-tos of your life, like three moments or three things through which you relax up.
Okay, so one of course is spending time with my cats. I have two cats, Mojo and Jojo, and in fact they are absolutely not affectionate, as a lot of people might have seen in Facebook videos that cats come and snuggle and do all of those cute things. They are the absolute opposite. You have to get hold of them, and I think they've taught me how to be patient in life, that things don't come so easily. One of the things which I definitely look forward to every day is spending time with my cats. Then something which I definitely go to is working out. I've been following a very regular routine for the past 1.5 years, and right now I'm in a stage where I can't give up working out, even for less than 3 times a week. It's a red flag for me. So that's something which gives me confidence, which makes me, of course, it releases endorphins. Like that's what you're supposed to know. Like it releases endorphins so that you feel happy in general. So if today I'm sad, I can be rest assured that if tomorrow I'm working out properly, I would be happy tomorrow. So that's the second thing. Third thing is watching trashy shows. Watching trashy shows. By that I mean, so I haven't watched Game of Thrones. I haven't watched great movies like Lord of the Rings or whatever. Like I haven't seen 90% of the greatest media which is out there, simply because of the fact that I only watch things which are funny, and I also have a reason for that. It's because I'm working throughout the day, because my mind is running so many thoughts per minute, per second throughout the day. At the end of the day, I just need something this way I don't want to spend even a single brain cell. So I like watching trashy shows. I wouldn't name any because that would not really go well with my profile and or my general aura. So yeah, but what I need to come clean with is that my weakness is watching trashy, funny shows which don't make sense to a lot of people.
Right, so yeah. Just to okay, just now you mentioned that there are a lot of things going on in your mind per minute, per second. Yeah, if to quote you. So if you could just tell what is going in your mind right now.
Earthquakes. I'm actually hearing a lot of dogs bark, and I'm just feeling that it might be an earthquake, but it's not. It's not. But yeah, these days it's just an impeding fear of either earthquake or corona, which is eating everybody up in Delhi. I think I can't go out of my house because of this fear, but I can't stay in my house also all the time because of the earthquake scare. There's a huge earthquake scare actually these days because of the 10-11 earthquakes in the recent 1 or 2 months. So yeah, after thinking about all of these things, at the end of the day, I just need to relax. Like I don't want to solve mysteries and riddles by watching shows which have very deep meaning. That's my justification for watching trashy, funny shows.
Right. So we are being very what you call demanding, but only if you can have Mojo or Jojo, if possible.
Yeah, actually, I had a glimpse of Mojo right now.
So if I sort of, so this is the only thing which I can lure them with, right? Jojo, oh.
Cats have become smart now.
They won't budge. They're very yeah. So actually, wait. If you can.
Great.
Oh. So yeah, this is the only glimpse which you might be getting. Also, whenever my friends come to my place, they have this unreal expectation that the cat will come to them and have a good time with the guests. But these two don't show up when any guests or any friends come. They simply hide and they don't come out till everybody goes. So in general, both of them are very, very shy cats.
Right.
As compared to dogs, when anybody enters through the door, first ones they will rush to that person and will pounce on him.
Yeah. First thing they do is they rush and they hide. That's their instinct.
They are like black cat commandos, maybe.
I think that's how the name was coined. I think.
Yeah, maybe. Also, if you have watched Kid vs Cat.
Sorry.
There's a cartoon as an anime. Kid vs Cat.
No, I haven't.
There's.
These are the kind of things which make me realize that I'm actually from a different generation, maybe. Because sometimes I forget that I finished school in 2011 when the only cartoons which we used to see were Dexter's Lab or Powerpuff Girls or Tom and Jerry and all of these very classic cartoons. Dragon Ball Z, then Pokemon came, then there was some other, right after Pokemon there was some other cartoon. No, not Ben 10. Ben 10 came later. I think. No, there was some in which there was a toy which you used to
अरे वो dragon से related था ना, मतलब you land up in a fairy tale where there are only dragons. नहीं, Beyblade. You are calling of Beyblade.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, my cartoon days were only till Beyblade, not beyond that. I sometimes realize how old I'm getting.
I guess after that you were busy filming Flight of the Bumblebee.
True,
Right.
true.
Yeah.
That's also there.
And the next day you go
Right.
for trekking. Right. So yeah,
I guess this has
such
been
a grateful conversation. We started off from NLU, Memo Pandits now till from Memo Pandits to Beyblade. Such a varied topics.
Varied, yeah, correct.
I guess what makes a conversation more relaxing is when you are when you don't have any restrictions to talk of. Like you don't
Right.
have to censor your content. What so? I guess
That you have to take care of. Whatever censor
Oh.
you want to put, that's on you. Whatever you want to put
no,
on
no,
your
no,
YouTube
not like
channel.
that. What I mean to say is that you don't think twice before saying that I don't
Right.
watch Game of Thrones
Yeah.
or Lord of the
Yeah,
Rings.
just say it
Like
anyway.
that.
Yeah.
Self.
So actually, if you even go through my Instagram feed, I'm mostly an open book. Like everything which I do every day is mostly up there, and probably like all my interests, all my thoughts, all my views on anything which is going on. I never sort of censor myself.
Right. I guess this has brought us to end of a beautiful journey. I won't say an episode because this journey lasted a week, and I guess
Right.
Amay, you have something to add to it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the thing which Anand sir said, yeah, one should not have a filter. Yeah, right. Yeah, that thing, that is a ideal way to lead a life. Yeah, I also support it 100%. Yeah.
Right then,
And-
sir. I guess you have been a wonderful guest. We have
Thank you so
had
much. Thank
we
you so
have
much for having
had
me.
this blessing, or you can say this. What you call this? You appeared as an angel to us.
The only thing was that the entire week I had webinars back to back. Even till yesterday, I had a webinar, and what I thought was that once I get done with all of these, then I'll have a talk with you guys, and I'm glad that I did. So yeah, like very good thing that you guys have found more speakers. I went through a couple of your promo videos, so I was happy to see that you guys are progressing. So just keep doing that. That's all.
Thank you so much, sir. It really means a lot to us.